You can order the upper control arms used in the video on the CarParts.com website via the link in the description. Turn your engine off. Set the parking brake. Pull on the bonnet release handle. Open the bonnet. Before lifting your vehicle, it is necessary to measure the distance between the center of your wheel and the wheel arc. This will allow you to achieve an optimal tightening of the silent block equipped elements in their initial position. Loosen the stud bolts on the front wheels. Lift the front of your vehicle. Place the vehicle on the axle stands. We strongly suggest watching our video on how to jack your Ford F-150 safely before carrying out this step. To be able to replace the upper control arms on your vehicle, you need to remove the wheels to gain complete access to the suspension system. Don't forget to put the wheels under the vehicle. You can now see your car's upper control arm, as well as the strut, the sway bar end link, and the outer tie rod that need to be taken out in order to change the upper control arm. To do so, we recommend watching our video, How to Replace the Outer Tie Rod Ford F-150. Disconnecting the sway bar end link from the sway bar is also necessary. To do so, we recommend watching our video, How to Replace the Sway Bar End Links Ford F-150. To gain access to the two bolts in the upper control arm silent blocks, it is necessary to remove the strut. For the removal of the 3 nuts holding the strut mount bearing and the strut foot bolt, we advise you to watch our video on How to Replace the Struts Ford F-150. You must then disassociate the upper control arm ball joint of the wheel knuckle. Brush the upper control arm ball joint nut and spray it with penetrating oil. Tip: to avoid everything rotating when unscrewing, reinsert the outer tie rod into its knuckle without screwing it back in. Then release the ball joint with a breaker bar and a 21mm socket. Hey, it's Alex from CarParts.com. If you enjoyed this video and want to support us, like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, back to work. Then remove the outer tie rod. Unscrew the nut with a ratchet without removing it completely. Disengage the ball joint from the knuckle, hitting it with a hammer. Before removing the nut, it is necessary to support the lower control arm with a jack to prevent the wheel knuckle from falling. Once the hole is secured, finish unscrewing the nut. Lower the wheel knuckle slightly with the jack to disconnect the ball joint, to create the space needed to remove the strut. Using a crowbar, release the strut foot from the control arm. Remove the strut. You now have access to the 2 silent block screws of the upper control arm. Disconnect the vacuum lines from the hub lock actuator using a fork. Brush the 2 nuts of the upper control arm silent block retaining bolts and spray them with penetrating oil. If you want to know which tools and parts we use in this video, just check the description and you'll find everything you need. Using a 21mm spanner, lock the nut on the front silent block retaining bolt and unlock the bolt using a breaker bar and a 21mm socket. Finish unscrewing it using a socket wrench. Then remove the screw. Using the same tools, repeat the operation on the rear silent block screw. Then remove the screw. You can now remove the upper control arm by pulling it towards you and moving it back and forth. Brush and grease the control arm area to facilitate its installation. You can now order the upper control arms used in the video on the CarParts.com website via the link in the description. Unscrew the ball joint retaining screw. Take the control arm. Then install it. Reinsert the retaining bolts of the silent blocks. You can purchase the parts we used here by visiting our website at CarParts.com. And screw the nuts back on, first by hand, then loosely with a ratchet and the spanner. Reconnect the vacuum lines. It is important that the control arm and the silent block slide easily into their slots before a final tightening is carried out. For accessibility reasons, the final tightening of the silent block screws must be done without the strut. Tip: to avoid everything rotating when screwing, reinsert the outer tie rod into its knuckle without screwing it back in. Start by temporarily replacing the control arm ball joint in its knuckle using the jack, and then screw it back in. In order not to damage the silent blocks, it is necessary to tighten the front retaining bolts in the vehicle on the ground position. Lift the wheel knuckle with the jack until the original measurement between the center of the wheel and the wheel arc is reached. Complete then the tightening of the silent block's holding screws. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. In order to put the strut back in place, it is necessary to release the ball from its knuckle. Loosen the ball joint retaining nut. Then lower the jack slightly. Take a hammer and hit the knuckle. The ball joint should come out of the knuckle. Finish unscrewing the nut. Then disassemble the hole. Remove the outer tie rod. Now you need to reinstall the strut. To do so, we recommend watching our video, How to Replace the Strut's Ford F-150. Put the outer tie rod back in place. Then screw it back on. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Using a wire brush, scrub the knuckle of the wheel knuckle. Then apply silicone grease to the flat part that will be in contact with the upper control arm ball joint sleeve. Do not grease the inside of the cone. Reinsert the ball joint, then screw it back in. You can now complete the tightening of the upper suspension arm ball joint with a torque wrench. You can now put the sway bar end link back in place and screw it back in. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Insert the third nut to hold the strut mount bearing in place. Then screw the 3 nuts back on with a ratchet until they make contact. For the final tightening of the strut foot and the strut's bearing nuts, repeat the measuring technique used for the final tightening of the control arm silent blocks. Then, you will be able to put the wheels back on your vehicle. During this operation, you will be intervening on the front axle of your car, so it is advisable to perform a wheel alignment afterwards. Put your vehicle back on the ground before properly fixing the wheels in place. Operation completed.